Africa is heading to the polls later this year, and for the first time, there will be strict rules governing political parties and their cash. The much-awaited Political Party Funding Act has come into effect as of today. The new law prohibits direct donations from foreign governments, organs of state and proceeds of crime. To explain the new act and its implications, I'm joined now by George Mahlangu, the Chief Executive for Party Funding at the Independent Electoral Commission. Thank you so much for joining me, Mr. Mahlangu. So the IEC Vice Chairperson, Commissioner Janet Love, is quoted as having described this development as, quote, the most important far-reaching enhancement to the electoral legislative framework since 1994, end quote. Why would this act warrant such a glowing recommendation by the Commissioner?
Yeah, good morning, Thulasizwe, and good morning to your viewers at home. Thulasizwe, this is a very important piece of legislation since the dawn of democracy in the country. It seeks to promote accountability. Secondly, it seeks to promote transparency on how political parties are funded in the country. I mean, this is the first of its kind. It also seeks to protect the sovereignty of the Republic by prohibiting certain donations from foreign sources. Voters would know before they go to the booth which political party has been funded by private sources. So this information will be available to the voters at least for the first time before the local government elections.
Yes, so talk to me about that. What are the mechanisms that are in place? We do expect that the local government elections will happen sometime from August to November, thereabouts, in terms of at least the timeframes as we know them to be, in terms of the law and the Constitution. When, if we're saying there'll be quarterly reports on political party funding, what can South Africans look forward to before the elections, and by around about when can we expect to have the veil lifted on funding of some of these political parties?
Yeah, Thulasizwe, the legislation provides for the disclosure of direct donations to the political party's bank account for any amount that is above 100,000 per annum per source, limited to 15 million per annum. This can be donations in cash, or this is in monetary form, donations in kind, or both. So meaning that if a bus company owner donates 80,000 cash directly into the political party's coffers, and at the same time donates the services of his bus company to ferry members of a political party from one point to another, to the tune of more than 20,000 in the normal course of business, those two would be coming from a single source. And aggregated, if they are above 100K, that has to be disclosed by both the donor and the political party to the Commission. Now, the political party would accumulate those donations for a period of 3 months, and then post the period of 3 months, they've got a quarter to submit to the Commission. Now, the arrangement that we would want to make with the political parties is that at least in 60 days, after the end of the quarter, they need to submit these donations to us, which gives us a period of 30 days to publish these donations on our platform, which is our website, or any other online platform, where the public will be in a position to view who has donated directly to a political party.
So if you're talking about 60 days after the end of the quarter, it's unlikely then that we will see the first reports before the local government elections, is it? I mean, knowing our political parties, if we say a quarter is what, 3 months, and then they have 60 days after that, are we likely to see the first reports before local government elections?
You see, the legislation requires them to submit quarterly. They can actually do it at the end of the quarter. You know, at the end of at the end of the 90th day. Actually, by this arrangement that we're making with the political party is that they still have to consolidate these donations. They can submit late, but of course that won't give us, you know, sufficient time as the commission to publish the donations. Now, what we mustn't, the point that we mustn't miss here, Thulasuzwe, is that we mustn't look at the elections as though the legislation was developed taking the local government elections. So the legislation could have been, you know, implemented last year.
Yeah.
Now that the local government elections are upon us, and the legislation refers to 30 days, quarterly submissions, and then we're going to, you know, run and expect that the political parties must submit within
Sure.
the quarter. So I think we mustn't miss that point, that it is coincidental that it is implemented.
Absolutely.
Today, but the local government elections are coming soon. So we mustn't miss that point.
No, absolutely. Mr. Mahlangu, before I run out of time, have the two funds been set up? The funding, the represented political parties fund, as well as the multi-party democracy fund, have those been set up, the structures in place, and the various trustees of the funds and channels for donations known and publicized, and governance mechanisms as well? Because the last thing you and I want is another, I don't know, RAF situation, road accident fund situation, where money is just, you know, it's difficult to manage.
No, we won't reach that stage, Thulasuzwe. Yes, the two bank accounts have been opened. The legislation provides for the administration of those two funds within the commission. So the first bank account refers to the represented political parties fund. This is the money that comes from the public source. And then the second bank account is the multi-party democracy fund, which will receive money from private sources, and it doesn't have limitations like direct donations to political parties has. So the contributor can donate way above 15 million. However, the contributor may request to remain anonymous, as the legislation doesn't provide for multi-party democracy fund to be published. However, I think the Commission at the moment is of the opinion that it is the right thing to do. We may publish these contributions from the multi-party democracy fund.
Yeah.
And the formula that will utilize to distribute these funds will be similar as the formula that will be used in the RPPF, which is Represented Political Parties Fund. Look, the parties that are not represented at national and provincial legislatures are complaining at the moment that the legislation expects them to meet certain provisions of this legislation, like appointment of accounting officers, like submission of financial statements, if they have received private donations. However, they are not receiving money.
In fact, you take me to the next point.
Two funds.
You have, you have been quite vocal about that. There are many, many limitations that even those who support and are excited about the Act coming into effect that they point to already, many, many weaknesses. And you have pointed out that particular weakness, that if South Africa is meant to be a multi-party democracy and political parties are part of the vehicles through which we exercise this democracy, funding just those parties that are represented in the national and provincial legislatures leaves a weakness there. There's a bit of a gap. To me, it suggests that it will be difficult to have any new voices coming into play. Am I understanding this wrong?
You're correct, Thulasuzwe. However, the legislation draws its strength from the Constitution. Now, Section 236 of the Constitution provides for the deepening of a multi-party democracy by funding represented political parties only at national and provincial level. So I think the point of departure there, guides any legislation that will come up regarding the funding of political parties. Now, as a result of that section of the Constitution, political party funding will have those limitations that for now we will have to the legislation concentrate on the funding of those political parties that are represented in these two legislative houses. However, we do not know what will happen after the Electoral Act was found to be unconstitutional when it comes to the participation of independents at provincial and national legislatures. So maybe once the National Parliament has finalized the unconstitutionality of the Electoral Act, we may see funding of independents because we would expect that independents may have to be represented in these legislative houses. That will then force or will result to the political party funding to be amended to consider the new Electoral Act.
All right, I'm out of time. One word answer, please. The first step, I understand, is for political parties, the ANC, the EFF, the DA, Free Aids, Front Plus, all of them, ATM, to head on over to your website and register on the electronic platform. Is that the first step?
That's what they have to do. And I must say that we have covered quite a bit of ground around that. We've trained all political parties, registered and represented and unrepresented. And those who are represented were trained on site because already these are the parties that are in our space in terms of complying with this legislation. So we trained them. They've got until the 15th of April to submit this electronically, to submit this information on the online party funding system that has been developed by the Commission.
Mr. George Mahlangu, thank you so much for your insights. He is the Chief Executive for Party Funding at the IEC. Basically, the long and short of it, people like Edwin Sodi, the company formerly known as Bosasa, the Guptas, Steinhoff in the case of the DA and the motor vehicle that was used by one Musi Maimane, all of them, if that comes up to over 100,000 rand from a single source per annum, those will have to be disclosed in advance. We don't have to wait for the Zondo Commission to find out about some of these things. Let's see